The clock struck 5 in the morning when the first rooster's crow echoed through the upscale neighborhoods of Forbes Park. Inside his walled property, Manny Pacquiao was already awake, watching through security cameras a movement that had been repeating for weeks. His driver, Domingo, a quiet man in his early 50s, would park the black Mercedes-Benz an hour before scheduled and immediately disappear into the side streets carrying an old canvas backpack. The behavior intrigued the world boxing champion. Domingo had worked for him for 4 years, always demonstrating impeccable professionalism and absolute discretion. However, in recent weeks, something had changed. The driver arrived with deep dark circles under his eyes, trembling hands gripping the steering wheel, and an inexplicable urgency to finish his workday. Pacquiao also noticed that Domingo refused even a glass of water during long days of commitments. During a trip to Soler Resort for a charity event, Pacquiao observed through the rearview mirror how his driver fought against sleep, pinching his own arm to stay alert. The journey along Roxas Boulevard, normally filled with comments about traffic or weather, transpired in absolute silence. Domingo seemed to carry the weight of the world on his hunched shoulders, and his heavy breathing suggested exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. That afternoon, after dropping Pacquiao at the event, Domingo made a mistake that further increased suspicions. He forgot his cell phone in the car console when he went to the bathroom. The device rang insistently, and Pacquiao saw on the screen the name St. Luke's Hospital, urgent. When the driver returned and realized his oversight, his face visibly paled, but he pocketed the phone without explanation. The mystery deepened when Pacquiao discovered, through his security team, that Domingo had requested several salary advances in recent months. The security chief also mentioned seeing the driver leaving known loan sharks in the Divisoria area. The possibility of his employee being involved with gambling or something worse deeply disturbed the boxer, who decided to investigate personally before taking any drastic measures. 3 days later, Pacquiao put into practice a meticulous plan. Wearing faded jeans, a simple shirt, and a Ginebra Gin King's cap, he transformed into just another ordinary Filipino on Manila's busy streets. He positioned himself in a jeepney parked near his residence's service gate, carefully observing Domingo's arrival at 4:30 in the morning. As predicted, the driver parked, nervously checked his surroundings, and hurried away with his characteristic backpack. Pacquiao jumped from the jeepney and followed on foot, maintaining a safe distance as Domingo navigated through Makati's narrow alleys. The contrast between corporate skyscrapers and workers' improvised dwellings created an urban landscape that reflected the Philippines' social disparities. The route took Pacquiao through Guadalupe Market, where vendors were already setting up their fruit and vegetable stalls. Domingo stopped briefly at a 24-hour pharmacy, emerging with a bulky bag he carefully stored in his backpack. He continued his journey, now toward the humbler neighborhoods of Mandaluyong, where streets became progressively narrower and more precarious. After 40 minutes of walking, Domingo finally entered a dead-end alley known as Sitio Pulo. Pacquiao knew the area's reputation, a pocket of extreme poverty where entire families lived in shacks made of plywood and metal sheets. Sewage ran in open channels, and barefoot children played among piles of garbage. The boxer hesitated, painful memories of his own miserable childhood in General Santos City flooding his mind. Domingo disappeared into a precarious 2-story structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Pacquiao approached cautiously, noting that several families appeared to occupy the same cramped space. Children's voices mixed with hoarse coughs and a baby's crying. Through an improvised window covered only by a piece of plastic, the boxer positioned himself to observe what was happening inside. The scene that unfolded before Pacquiao's eyes left him deeply shaken. Domingo was kneeling beside a thin mattress laid on the cracked concrete floor, where an elderly woman lay connected to an improvised oxygen tank. Around them, 6 children of different ages watched in silence as the driver carefully checked the medications he had bought, administering them with the precision of an experienced nurse. A passing neighbor noticed Pacquiao observing and, without recognizing him, spontaneously began telling the story of that family. The elderly woman was Aling Rosa, a street vendor who had suffered a severe stroke 3 months ago. The children were her grandchildren, orphaned after their parents died in a landslide during Typhoon Carding. Domingo, Pacquiao discovered with astonishment, had no blood relation to them. The connection had begun 2 years earlier when Domingo found Aling Rosa unconscious on the street during one of his morning rounds. He took her to the hospital, paid for initial treatment, and since then had gradually assumed responsibility for the entire family. When the stroke occurred, medical costs multiplied exponentially. The medications to prevent new episodes cost more than Domingo's monthly salary, forcing him to desperately seek extra work. Through the window, Pacquiao observed Domingo distribute the breakfast he had brought, fresh pan de sal and boiled eggs, rare luxuries in that environment of extreme deprivation. The children ate voraciously while the driver checked their school backpacks, all mended but clean. The eldest, a girl of about 14, showed a report card that drew a tired smile from Domingo, followed by a proud embrace. What impacted Pacquiao most was realizing that Domingo didn't eat anything, saving his portion in a small container. He would later discover that the driver had only 1 meal a day, saving every cent for the adoptive family's needs. When one of the younger children began coughing, Domingo immediately checked their temperature, paternal concern evident in every gesture. Before leaving for work, Domingo gathered the children in a circle, and they prayed the Lord's Prayer together, a morning ritual that clearly provided comfort and stability amid the chaos of poverty. Pacquiao felt tears burning his eyes as he witnessed this demonstration of faith and unconditional love, ashamed for having suspected dark motivations behind his driver's behavior. In the subsequent days, Pacquiao conducted a discreet and thorough investigation into Domingo's double life. He discovered that his driver worked as a night guard at a textile factory in Cavite, driving for 2 hours after dropping him home to reach his second job. On weekends, Domingo operated a small car washing business in a mall parking lot, working under the scorching sun for endless hours. The magnitude of the sacrifice revealed itself even more shocking when Pacquiao learned that Domingo had sold his small house in Antipolo 6 months earlier when Aling Rosa needed urgent heart surgery. The driver now slept in a 3-square-meter rented room in a cheap boarding house, sharing a bathroom with 20 other residents. His possessions were reduced to 2 changes of clothes and a faded photo of his deceased wife. During daily commutes, Pacquiao began observing details he had previously ignored. Domingo wore shoes with worn soles mended with glue, his shirts were carefully darned at the cuffs, and he never turned on the car's air conditioning when alone, even in Manila's suffocating heat. Every economy, no matter how small, was destined for that family in Sitio Pulo. The most revealing moment occurred when Pacquiao pretended to forget his wallet and asked Domingo for lunch money. The driver, without hesitation, handed over the only bills he had in his pocket, his food for that day. When Pacquiao insisted they have lunch together to return the money, Domingo politely refused, claiming to have brought a packed lunch from home, an obvious lie the driver could barely sustain. Domingo's deteriorating health became increasingly evident. Besides chronic exhaustion, he had developed dangerously high blood pressure and early signs of diabetes, direct consequences of extreme stress and poor nutrition. On a particularly hot afternoon, the driver almost fainted at the wheel, recovering only with great effort. Pacquiao suggested a medical consultation, but Domingo vehemently refused, the panic in his eyes revealing fear of medical expenses he couldn't afford. The final straw came when Pacquiao discovered that Domingo had resorted to a notorious loan shark to pay for Aling Rosa's medications that month. The exorbitant interest created an impossible debt spiral, and there were rumors that the loan shark was beginning to make veiled threats. The boxer understood he needed to act immediately, before the situation became irreversible. On Saturday morning, Pacquiao carefully executed his plan. He called Domingo at 6 in the morning, requesting to be picked up for an urgent and unexpected appointment. The driver, despite it being his day off, arrived promptly in 30 minutes, visibly exhausted after his night shift at the factory. His red eyes and trembling hands betrayed that he hadn't slept at all. Instead of giving a specific destination, Pacquiao instructed Domingo to drive to Divisoria, claiming he needed to buy training equipment wholesale. During the journey, they made several strategic stops, first at one of Manila's best medical clinics, then at a large pharmacy, followed by a wholesale supermarket where Pacquiao filled the car with food, clothes, and school supplies. Domingo observed everything with growing nervousness, especially when Pacquiao bought a state-of-the-art hospital oxygen tank and expensive cardiac treatment medications. When the boxer finally announced the true destination, Sitio Pulo, the driver's face lost all color. His hands began trembling violently on the steering wheel, and he pleaded through desperate gestures to go anywhere else. The tension in the car was suffocating as they approached the familiar alley. Domingo tried various desperate excuses, from engine problems to non-existent traffic blocks. When they finally parked, the driver remained paralyzed, unable to leave the vehicle. Pacquiao had to practically drag him out, personally carrying the first boxes of supplies. The children, playing outside the shack, were the first to recognize Domingo. They ran toward him but stopped abruptly upon seeing the well-dressed stranger beside him. The eldest girl, with widened eyes, whispered, recognizing the illustrious visitor. The shock spread through the alley like a wave, neighbors emerging from their homes to witness the surreal scene. Inside the cramped shack, Aling Rosa tried to rise from her mattress upon recognizing the illustrious visitor. Pacquiao gently prevented her, kneeling beside her and taking her fragile hands. With a choked voice, he explained that he knew everything: Domingo's sacrifices, her illness, the children's situation. The silence that followed was broken only by the driver's contained sobs, who finally yielded to the emotional weight of months of solitary struggle. With tears in his eyes, Pacquiao revealed the true purpose of his visit. First, he handed Domingo a check covering all his debts to loan sharks, including accumulated interest. Next, he presented documents guaranteeing complete medical treatment for Aling Rosa at one of Manila's best hospitals, including necessary surgeries and rehabilitation. The cost, which would take Domingo decades to pay, would be fully covered. The most emotional moment came when Pacquiao announced he had purchased a 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood of Marikina for the family. The children would each have their own space, and there was a specially adapted ground floor room for Aling Rosa, with all necessary medical facilities. The deed was already in the elderly woman's name, ensuring permanent security for her and her grandchildren. For the children, Pacquiao established complete scholarships at an excellent private school, covering not just tuition, but uniforms, school supplies, meals, and transportation. Each child also received an educational savings account that would guarantee their studies through university. The eldest girl, who dreamed of becoming a doctor, cried upon learning her dream was now possible. But it was the gift for Domingo that provoked the most intense reaction. Besides tripling his salary and providing complete health benefits, Pacquiao offered something the driver had abandoned decades ago: the opportunity to complete his education. A full scholarship in pedagogy, the course Domingo had always dreamed of taking before life forced him to abandon studies for work. The boxer went further, creating a substantial emergency fund for the family and hiring a private nurse to care for Aling Rosa during her recovery. He also arranged psychological therapy for the children, recognizing the trauma of losing their parents. Every detail was designed not just to solve immediate problems, but to create lasting stability. Domingo tried to refuse, gesticulating frantically and pointing to himself as unworthy of such generosity. Pacquiao interrupted him with a firm embrace, demonstrating through his actions that he had witnessed in that simple man the purest expression of love for others. The champion understood that true greatness wasn't in titles or fame, but in the capacity to love without expecting anything in return. The family's move to the new house in Marikina was an event that mobilized the entire community of Sitio Pulo. Neighbors who had witnessed years of struggle and sacrifice celebrated the reversal of fortune for Aling Rosa and her grandchildren. Domingo, initially embarrassed by the attention, gradually accepted that his story had touched hearts and inspired greater changes. Pacquiao, deeply impacted by the experience, decided to expand his help. He created the Anonymous Heroes Foundation, dedicated to identifying and supporting people like Domingo, workers who silently sacrificed their well-being to help others. The foundation offered not just emergency financial support, but also education programs, preventive health care, and professional development. Domingo, even reluctant to completely abandon his multiple jobs, was convinced to accept a role in the foundation. His life experience and deep understanding of poor communities' needs made him invaluable for identifying genuine cases of need. He continued as Pacquiao's driver, but now with flexible hours allowing his studies and community work. Aling Rosa's recovery was remarkable. With proper treatment and appropriate nutrition, she gradually regained mobility and lucidity. The children flourished in the new environment. Their grades improved dramatically. They participated in extracurricular activities, and for the first time had the childhood they deserved. The eldest became a volunteer tutor for children in Sitio Pulo, perpetuating the cycle of kindness. The impact extended to the former community. Inspired by Domingo, Pacquiao invested in substantial improvements in Sitio Pulo, installation of drinking water, construction of a community center with basic clinic, and professional training programs. Domingo coordinated these projects, ensuring help reached the neediest families without creating dependency. In pedagogy classes, Domingo discovered his true vocation. His professors were impressed with his dedication and unique perspective on education based on real experiences of overcoming adversity. He developed a special project focused on children from poor communities, combining formal education with practical life skills and moral values. 2 years later, at an emotional ceremony in the University of Manila auditorium, Domingo Reyes received his pedagogy diploma with highest honors. Pacquiao occupied a prominent place in the audience, alongside Aling Rosa, now recovered and radiant, and the 6 children, all impeccably dressed and overflowing with pride. The family's transformation was living testimony to the power of selfless love. In his graduation speech, chosen to represent his class, Domingo shared his extraordinary journey. He spoke about how extreme poverty in his childhood had sensitized him to others' suffering, how the early loss of his wife had taught him about life's fragility, and how meeting Aling Rosa had given new purpose to his existence. His voice choked as he thanked Pacquiao, not just for material help, but for validating and amplifying his small acts of kindness. The night's surprise came when Domingo announced the creation of Hope Community School, a revolutionary educational project in Sitio Pulo. With Pacquiao's full support, the school would offer free quality education, meals, uniforms, and school supplies for children from the poorest communities. The differential would be the methodology developed by Domingo, integrating academic education with psychosocial support and values development. Pacquiao took the stage for his own announcement. The Anonymous Heroes Foundation had identified and supported over 500 families in 2 years, creating a national solidarity network. Domingo would be the foundation's educational director, responsible for training volunteers and developing educational programs in poor communities throughout the Philippine archipelago. The most touching moment occurred when the 6 children took the stage. The eldest, now a confident 16-year-old young woman, read a letter on behalf of all siblings. She thanked Domingo for being the father fate had denied them, for sacrificing his own health and happiness to guarantee them a future. She concluded that Tito Domingo had taught them that family isn't just blood, but daily choice to love. provoking tears throughout the audience. The ceremony ended with Pacquiao reflecting on how that fateful morning, when he decided to follow his driver, had changed his own life as much as Domingo's. The boxer confessed that all his world titles paled in comparison to the lesson learned, that true human greatness manifests in silent acts of compassion, in daily choices to place others' well-being above one's own comfort. As applause echoed through the auditorium, Pacquiao embraced Domingo, two men from different worlds united by the profound understanding that love for others is the most powerful force in the universe. Domingo Reyes's story became urban legend in Manila, living proof that angels exist among us, often disguised as ordinary people making extraordinary choices. And so, the legacy of compassion continued to spread, like concentric ripples on a lake, touching countless lives and proving that kindness, once recognized and amplified, has the power to transform not just individual destinies, but the very fabric of society. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.